the penalty phase, I mean, this is a whole different ball of wax, because now he can be found to maybe not get the death penalty because of his mental illness, which these experts say caused him to commit this crime.
Mm-hmm. It's very confusing. I mean, not involved in the legal. Because from an outsider point of view, it's like, well, he's sane, so he's not found innocent for reasons of insanity, but he's not going to get the death penalty because he is insane. It's like, what?
Right, exactly. It's just that legal definition that the jurors had to work within, when they were doing the guilt phase of the trial. But now, when you're talking about a death penalty phase, this is where the jurors can use their personal feelings and how they feel about wanting to give James Holmes a death penalty or not. And it's hard to get a group of people to all decide on that. A lot of them do when it comes to child killings. They all can seem to agree very fast. A lot of cop killings, people tend to agree and give defendants death penalty. When you're dealing with somebody very mentally ill, even though this crime was just horrendous, horrible, it gets a little harder to get all of them on board.
Interesting. Yeah, so now what do you think now today? You're streaming it live today too, and they have his second grade teacher on. Do you think that's another, they're trying to get more sympathy for him, talking about him when he was a child and all that?
Yes, they've been dragging up their church members, family members, second grade teachers, high school teachers, elementary school teachers, and I just don't think that those people have the impact that the sister has had so far, and then we're going to hear from the parents this afternoon. Those are going to be the three people that have the chance to save James Holmes' life. The elementary school people, the friends, they're all giving an account of what he was like as a child. And even some of the friends, what he was like in high school. And they just really aren't giving us a good picture of who he was before he committed this crime.
Right. All right. I'll come back to him, but I want to go talk about another trial you covered, Stephen DeMacher. This one interested me because it said that the prosecutors landed a conviction based on circumstantial evidence because there was no DNA, no eyewitness, no blood, no confession, and no other evidence tying him to murdering his wife.
Right.
But she was on the phone with her mother.
Yeah, it was very circumstantial evidence, but it really pointed all to Stephen DeMacher. There just really wasn't anyone else that could have committed this crime. They had enough that they definitely secured that conviction, and that was another really interesting trial. It didn't pick up a lot of speed. Coming off of Diaries, that was a pretty big one for the state of Arizona. It was in Prescott, Arizona, kind of a smaller town. And they had a lot of witnesses that were testifying about Stephen DeMacher, his demeanor, how he was when his wife, supposedly he couldn't find her for a while. It really all pointed to him. There was no other person.
Really?
So
She was on the phone.
Got it right.
No, I was curious though, because they mentioned that he was on the phone, or she was on the phone with her mother when it happened, when she was attacked. But did her mother hear anything besides "oh no"? She said she heard her say "oh no," but that was it.
Yeah, that was it. And I believe they think that he killed her with a golf club or a baseball bat. I'm trying to remember.
Golf club, I think.
But golf club. Yeah, it had come from the home, and everything pointed to him. I mean, it proves that, these people try to get away with these murders, and, there isn't that DNA like most juries want, like the CSI effect, but you can still get a conviction on circumstantial evidence alone if you have the right witnesses.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's interesting. That was very interesting. And also, what was the other case? Let me pull it up here. And then I want to talk about Diaries again. One more case was the Brian Wayne Halsey. She was... Yes,
good one.
Go ahead.
That was a Juan Martinez trial, also a death penalty trial. And Brian Wayne Halsey, was on meth during a traffic stop. A police officer had stopped him during a traffic stop. The police officer had called for backup, and that was Officer Hawley, Anthony Hawley. Anthony Hawley showed up, and when they went to frisk Brian Halsey, he pulled out a gun and shot Anthony Hawley in the head, killing him instantly. Very emotional trial. It was actually one of the oldest trials at Maricopa County at the time that hadn't gone to trial. So this family, the victim's family, had to wait over 8 years to get this trial going, and it was a complicated trial. I'd have to say it's one of the most complicated to cover. I had to cover because there was a lot of bullet evidence, a lot of ballistic evidence, and I really had to, get myself very familiar with guns and ballistics. It wasn't this, salacious story that was easy to tell. It was very technical and complicated with bullet evidence. But great trial. I really liked the defendant's family, and I really liked the victim's family. They were just both a nice family. I felt really horrible for both of them. The victim's mother was emotional through most of the trial, which was very hard to watch. And Brian Wayne Halsey was a very arrogant, cocky defendant who ended up shouting at the end, at the jury that they got it wrong and had an outburst. And he was instantly hauled off to prison that day. They usually wait a week and transfer a defendant to prison from jail. They actually had the bus ready for him when he was convicted of the death penalty. They bussed him right over to the prison.
Wow. So you feel like justice was done in all of these cases? You agree with all the way the courts decided?
I do agree with all of them. The only one I really thought Jodi Arias would get the death penalty. I really did. I thought that from the beginning. So I was surprised, like many people, that she didn't. It was very close, 11-1. But she was one that surprised me.
Wow, 11-1. Yeah. Now, speaking of cocky, she was pretty cocky during court. What were some of the surprising things you noticed during that trial experience?
During the first trial, Jodi Arias was extremely cocky. I was sitting on the spectator side during the first trial, and she would constantly look into the spectators gallery, and she would pick somebody and stare you down. And I had my chance of just locking eyes with her, and she would just stare you down, constantly turning around, smiling into the gallery. Just had a really cocky attitude the whole time. Now, during the retrial, she was a very different person. She wasn't doing any of that. She was basically looking forward. Her attorneys seemed to semi-shield her from the media, and it was just a completely different person. She wasn't even emotional at all during the retrial, where during the first trial she cried a lot, during evidence. When evidence was presented, Jodi Arias would tend to cry and wipe her nose. During the retrial, there was none of that.
Did she seem authentic with her crying, or it came across pretty fake?
I always felt Jodi Arias cried for herself. I just always felt that she was upset that she found herself in this position and was caught. She did try to get away with it. I mean, we all saw the interrogation videos, and she packed some gas cans, the premeditation of it all, of her trying to get away with the crime. But she got caught, and I think that really made her distraught, that she was busted. All her lies were being exposed for everybody to see.
And she was pulling a lot of stunts. Like I was just watching one of your videos where you were talking about how everybody in the court had to be emptied out for a witness to come in and walk in front of the judge or something like that. And it turned out to be Jodi Arias. She wanted to practice her walk.
Yes, this was unprecedented, and none of us could believe it, but the media and the public were kicked out of the courtroom because we were told a witness was in fear of their life, and the judge found it necessary to remove us from watching their testimony. all any of us could think of was that it had to have been an expert that maybe was afraid, such as Alice LaViolette claimed to be during the first trial. We all thought it had to be some kind of expert or maybe a witness testifying on her behalf. We couldn't figure it out. The media, we all trucked over to the the higher courts. It got overturned. We got back into the courtroom only to find out, it was Jodi Arias that had been on the stand for a few days testifying. And the minute we all got back in there, Jodi Arias refused to take the stand again. She claims that she has, a fear of testifying in front of people, even though she testified for 18 days on the stand during the first trial and sparred, with Juan Martinez. Now she's afraid to testify in public. She's saying that she's getting death threats. Her family's getting death threats. And I think it was just more games from Jodi Arias, what she does.
Wow. So, anything else from that trial that was very unusual from her? There's a lot of things, but...
Oh, my gosh, there's so much. I mean, this trial, it's interesting that the Jodi Arias trial is now being, referenced in many other trials across the nation. Judges are just on high alert of how that trial, kind of went down, even as far as media coverage it's brought up. Just a lot of lawyers and judges are referencing the Jodi Arias trial in their arguments and opinions on how they're running their courtroom. Jodi Arias was just something else. I mean, we're talking about a defendant who is literally running a business from jail, and you just don't really hear much about that. You've got somebody selling their artwork, selling their glasses that they wore from the first trial. Just a lot of crazy stuff like that she was able to manipulate and get away with legally while being in jail, running websites.
Well, I heard about that she would charge people money to call her and talk to her. There are people paying to get her advice.
Yes, and she actually took advantage of the system, which it shocks me that this was even allowed. But, I mean, we heard she was getting up to 27 video phone chats a day. I mean, something's wrong with that. She's not bored at all, sitting in her cell. She was talking on the phone constantly. And they even were allowing, which is, I think, under investigation, but minors were calling Jodi Arias and asking her advice. Now, as a parent, how horrifying is that your daughters are getting advice, love advice from Jodi Arias?
God, that's pretty scary. But, it sort of goes to how popular, criminals have become, celebrities. In a way, they get so much media attention and
right.
Draws
And
people
there was such a big movement of people that disliked Casey Anthony. Just a huge, huge, huge movement of people that disliked Casey Anthony. You didn't really see that movement of people that supported her as much as they disliked her. With Jodi Arias, the support she had was almost as huge as the people that were supporting the victim's family. It was pretty equal. I mean, she had a ton of support. She's made a ton of money, and I just don't think that we'll be hearing the last from Jodi Arias. Even though she's in prison, she's still getting out letters that she's wanting to be public, and she's still, searching for ways to be relevant in the public.
Goodness. So now she's going to serve, what, like 25 years or at least, or what is the exact sentencing for her?
She got natural life, and in Arizona, that means she's in till she comes out in a pine box. She's in for life. There's no parole. Okay. She does have an appeal going, which lists. She gets one appeal, and she's listed everything that she felt was appealable with her lawyers. And if that's denied, that's it. That's it for Jodi Arias. There is no more.
So when will we know whether the appeal was denied or not? When do you think that would happen?
I really don't know. I don't know the time on this. It could take quite a while. Sometimes they take years. So I'm not sure on when we'll hear back from that.
Okay. Well, that does. I'll look forward to it. Now you're covering James Holmes now, correct? You're going to be.
Yes.
working on him. Anyone else besides him coming up?
We have a new one. We have a new one that started today. It's an interesting one out of Raleigh, North Carolina. It's a family, parents that had a wedding reception at their home and supplied alcohol to minors, 18-year-old boys, girls, and one of the boys drove home and wrecked into a tree, killed himself. So the parents are actually on trial for, his death and supplying alcohol to minors. So that one's on now that I have live streaming through my site. And we have quite a few coming up in the fall that I'm looking forward to covering.
Okay, great. All right, I think we've run out of time, but thank you for being on True Crimes Podcasts. And
thanks for having me.
Good luck.
Thank
you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.